This is a Summit Racing Big Block Chevy oil pan. I think they sell a lot of these things because I see a lot of them in other people's videos, but nobody ever does a review on them to see if they like them or not, or tell you what kind of problems they've had or how they've solved them. So that's what I'm going to do here. Do a little review on this thing, tell you what kind of problems I've had with it and whether I like it or not. So you're putting together your Big Block Chevy motor, and you're thinking about buying one of these Summit Racing oil pans, which does not come with the dipstick, by the way. It doesn't work out of the box by a long shot. So I'm going to show you all the things I had to do to get this pan to work with my big block Chevy. So the first thing you need to know, the depth of your stock pan is a little more than 9 inches, about 9 1/4. The depth of the Summit Racing pan, 8 inches. So the first problem I ran into is my stock oil pump stuck up too far. It stuck up about 8 1/2 inches, 8 inches deep. Who knew? So apparently all the aftermarket pans are shallower than your stock pan. So trying to reuse your stock pump and pickup, if it's welded, like mine is completely pointless. So new pump, new pickup, shorter pickup. Part number for the oil pump is M77, and then I got the 305S pickup tube, which is specifically for 8-inch deep oil pans. And this one not only has a shorter pickup tube, but also you see how the stock pump, the pickup tube points forward, and the shorter one points backward. And now, there's no way in hell it's gonna fit over that pickup tube. Watch this. There's nowhere near enough room for that to fit. If I use this pan, it's going to require a lot of modification. Here's the old pump. So for that to fit, look how much metal I would have to remove to get that thing to fit in there. Here's how much I had to trim to get that to work. I had to trim this top layer, and there's a second layer down in there too. I didn't trim that, but I bent it up. I had to do the same thing with this screen that goes in there. That had to be trimmed too. So I finally got my oil pump to fit. So then I got the milling oil pump and pickup tube, and that pickup tube didn't work because apparently this pan only works with one specific pickup, which they don't tell you in the description. If you dig around enough, you can find down in the comments below this pan on Summit's site, there's a comment down below that says they give a part number for a pickup tube. It's kind of a squarish looking pickup tube. So if I'd have known that, I would have saved myself a lot of trouble. But I didn't, so I had to cut this thing up to get the milling pickup tube to work. Next problem, doesn't come with a dipstick tube. So I ordered, they say any dipstick tube with a 1/4 inch NPT fitting will work. And on the description for the oil pan, this is one of the ones that they had recommended. So I got that put in, and I'm going to test it out. Thankfully it's not on the truck. Really? That's supposed to go down in that hole in order to measure the level of your oil. If I kind of bend this up as high as I can, there, now it goes down in the hole sometimes. You know, sometimes if I get it bent just right, it'll go down in there. So I'm betting once this is in the truck and the oil pan is mounted, I'm going to be trying to check my oil, and it's going to go like this. I'm not going to know. I can't see whether that goes down in that hole or not. So I'm going to have to cut this opening much bigger to make sure that that dipstick can go down in that hole where it's supposed to. Depending on which way this thing ends up being bent, depending on where the tab gets mounted once it's in the truck, that can change a lot. Actually, if it's bent backwards, it still just about hits. So I had to open up a pretty wide hole in there to make sure no matter what orientation this tube is in, I'll have clearance there. So now I can actually measure my oil. My next bright idea is to measure the capacity of this thing. So this pan is advertised as a 6-quart pan. So I've got 6 quarts of water in the bucket. I want to pour them in there, and I want to see how much of this pan it fills up, and I also want to see where the dipstick lines up with 6 quarts. About 2 quarts left in the bucket. So it looks like to the bottom of that, or to the top of that sump, it's about 4 quarts. So that's 6 quarts. I put this windage tray thing, or windage screen in there. So I guess that would be pretty close to the bottom of the crank, but probably just not quite, because the crank obviously won't hit this. I couldn't actually see the full or add lines, so I added a little orange paint on the full line and the add line. So that orange paint is the full line, and I'm guessing this tube, when it's mounted to the engine, is going to be kind of up like this, and that influences where that sticks. So if I put this about where I think it'll be mounted, the full line, glare off the light, it's way below it's about at the level of the bottom of the pan right here. And what did we say that was? About 4 quarts? So yeah, the real full line is going to be way up here if I want to measure 6 quarts. Good to know. I wonder how many people have this pan in their car. And number one, their dipstick is reading up here instead of going down the hole at all. And then when it is down the hole, I think it's full and it's got 4 quarts in it. So I think what I'm going to have to do here is, once I get this thing installed in the truck and I get this tube mounted and bolted down wherever it's going to be bolted to and get it bent the way it needs to be bent, then I'm going to put 6 quarts of oil in the pan, stick this thing in there, and then I'm going to have to take this apart. I think there's a little set screw there. Take this apart, shorten up this rod until the fill line, the full line, matches up with 6 quarts of oil. Another thing I noticed, so this pan is baffled. It's got this little door here that opens and closes. And there's a little compartment kind of behind the main sump back in here. So it traps some oil in there with that baffle door. But what I noticed is, look at that. The rest of this seems to be painted or powder coated, but down in there, that's all rusty. So, and that's not for me. I had water in this thing for about 60 seconds, and I just sprayed it all out with carb cleaner and cleaned it after I had water in it. So that rust has been there a while. This is how it came to me brand new. Now I debated on whether or not I wanted to paint this thing or just put it on black the way it came, but I decided I'll just paint it. And so I hit it with a scuff pad, and I'm glad I found this out because there's almost no paint on it. Whatever this black stuff is that it comes with, it's just like a really light coating. I barely scuffed it and it's gone. So I don't know if that's supposed to be paint or just a light primer or whatever, but I'm glad I found that out, so now I can put some decent coats of paint on this thing. Next problem, not really a problem, but this pan doesn't come with any provision for an oil temp sensor. So I had to get an 1/8 inch NPT bung and weld it on there so I can have oil temp. Simple thing, but for a $300 pan, it's more than $300 after taxes. You think they could put a bung on there for oil temp. Well, I got that oil pan on there. One more thing to take a look at. Pan rail covers up the oil cooler fittings, so you need to notch it, which I didn't do a very good job of. I need to trim this one a little more. So if you're gonna run an oil cooler, that needs to be notched in 2 places. This is what those oil cooler fittings look like once they're installed. This one closest to the oil filter is the one that goes out to your oil cooler, and this one here is the return line that comes back. This one you can just put a regular MPT to AN adapter in there, but this one you cannot. This fitting has a little redirector valve thing on the end of it that forces the oil to come out here and go through the oil cooler and be returned back in. If you don't use this fitting, if you just put a normal MPT fitting in there, what's going to happen is it won't force the oil to come out and go through the oil cooler. It could just go right past here and back into your engine. So that's why you have to have a special fitting on this one. And because I had to do some cutting and drilling and welding, it got full of metal shavings. And this pan is extremely difficult to clean. There's a really small, there's a sump here, and then a baffle here, and a smaller sump here. And this back area is almost impossible to clean. I went through 3 cans of carb cleaner and blew compressed air through there forever and tried to stuff rags back in there and magnets and everything to try to get the little metal shavings out. It took me forever to get this clean. It's very difficult to clean back in here. So after a bunch of cutting and trimming and grinding and welding and drilling and cleaning, I finally got this thing installed. When I painted it, in the end, was it worth it? Would I buy this thing again? Yeah, you can decide for yourself. I think for my next project, I'm just gonna pressure wash and sandblast and paint this one, the stock pan. I think that would work just perfectly fine and save me 300 bucks. And I can get in there with my hand. I can clean in there, I can reach everything. So I just think this would be more serviceable too. But whatever, I guess this will be fine. So that's it for now.